Hello, everyone. Welcome to the session PCI, SOC II, and FedRAMP, answering your compliance questions. My name's Shawn Maxim. I'm the manager of the security compliance groups here at Okta, and I get to work with the wonderful people that I'll introduce you to shortly. My part here is I'm going to give you a brief overview of security at Okta and a little bit about our compliance frameworks before we dive into the deeper details later. So first, we have to cover some basics. Since Okta is a public company, I need to flag here that any forward-looking statements we share with you are subject to change. So feel free to read through the safe harbor note in depth at your leisure. And here's our panelists today. So there's me, who I introduced already. After I speak will be Aakash Yadav. He'll talk about PCI for us. And then Ali Khan will come on board and he'll discuss SOC II. And to wrap it up, we'll have Michelle Tuggle talking about FedRAMP. So first, let's do a little bit of an overview of security here at Okta. One tenet I want to start with is privacy by design. So to get this kind of out of the way as we discuss further, our approach to data privacy is simple here. Customers own their own data. The customers are uploading the data into the service. So that data still belongs to the customer, not to us. Okta is only going to use that data to provide the service. We're not going to sell it to third parties. And we do keep our customers' data safe and secure, which is what my presentation is about. And so trust here is our #1 value. And I say that because we're not really selling security, we're not really selling identity, but we are selling trust. And since Okta was born in the cloud, we're well positioned to earn this trust. So security is kind of an interesting thing to discuss, and there's several different ways to go about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down into the 3 core tenets. We're going to talk about integrity, we're going to talk about availability, and we're going to talk about confidentiality. And so when we say enterprise-grade security, what we mean by that is security is baked into the entire company. This isn't something that just one portion of Okta is concerned with. Everyone here is. And that's how we make our strong multi-tiered information security program successful. First, let's go into integrity. And so security starts with identity, and that's kind of where Okta comes in. But what we mean by that is it's important to limit access. So the correct person should have the correct access to the correct data all the time. And this means people shouldn't have excessive access, right? And how we control that here internally is we have sensitive data access controlled via certificates, and these are all Okta managed certificates. We have MFA via our Okta Verify FIPS validated phone application for your smartphone. And then we also use hardware MFA tokens as an additional layer. In addition to that, we have really strong segregation of duties. And what we mean by that is developers who are writing code are not the same people that are going to deploy that code into production. As a matter of fact, writing code is just one step on our journey. The next step is going to be peer review to make sure that the code is up to snuff. After that, we're going to run it through our testing suite. This currently has over 65,000 tests. And so we're doing standard regression testing and edge case testing and making sure we didn't break any functionality. In addition, we're looking for vulnerabilities. So the OWASP top 10, the SANS top 20, for example. And only after the code passes through those tests will we allow that to proceed into our preview environment. Here's where we're going to let the code bake for a week. And while it's in there for a week, we're looking for usability issues. We're allowing our internal pen testing team to test the code to make sure there's nothing unexpected in there. And only after that will we allow the code to move into production. In addition, security is a C-level issue here. So when I started with it's part of everyone's job at Okta to be secure, that's also the security team has a primary focus. We have a seat at the table. So my team reports directly to the CSO, and our CSO reports directly to the CEO. So our voice is heard on decisions that are important. Also, we're going to talk about transparency quite a bit today. So good security is based on transparency. There was an older model of security by obscurity. It's just not that useful. It's more useful to have third-party audit reports available, pen tests available, and offer our customers the ability to do their own pen testing against Okta. This way, it's clear and defined what the security controls are covering. Let's talk about transparency a little bit more. So here you'll see an extended mountain of acronyms and certificates. So we don't need to read all the words on this slide. This is just a way to show the growth of our customer assurance program. So we do understand that compliance doesn't mean security, but at the same time, having third-party auditors come into our org and verify that we are meeting security controls as they're written is valuable. This is how we create that trust. And so this is also one way to demonstrate how effective our security controls are. So these certs also enable our customers who have to operate in regulated environments some key partnership so that Okta can help them meet the regulations. Let's move on to availability. So Okta is an identity service, and what this means is uptime is the crucial component. So if Okta's down, your users or your customers or both can't get into their critical applications. So if you look at this map that I displayed here, you'll notice the color coding. Okta allows our customers to choose which region their data is living in. So data residency is a customer choice. Once a customer chooses where their data resides, Okta's not going to copy the data from one region to another one. In addition, you'll notice multiple dots of each color. And what this lets us do is if one region were to fail, then the data would still work. Your customers could still log in. Your employees can still access the apps that they need to do their job via failover to the other zone. But let's talk about that a little further. So here's a zoom in just of North America. And you'll see here we have two regions. We have the West Coast and the East Coast. We have a third region as well, but let's just focus on these right now. And so our stateless architecture and our fault-tolerant architecture allows us to do things like we can upgrade the entire system without any downtime. It gives us redundancy so that if one of these data centers or regions were to go down, there would be zero customer impact. And any time that you wanted to see how Okta's doing or how your tenant is looking, you can always go to status.okta.com for the report. So what about confidentiality with this data spread everywhere? So here's where we're going to talk about encryption a little bit. And so this is the one part where transparency is not really the thing that we want. Not everything should be transparent. So for example, if customer 1 loads data into Okta and customer 2 loads data into Okta, neither customer should be able to see each other's data. And we accomplish that through organization-level encryption. And so we provided each organization with their own customer key. And what this means is organization 1 has a private key that's different than organization 2 and different than organization 3. And in addition to the private keys that each org has, Okta uses a master key to wrap that in one more layer of encryption. And we do all of this using Amazon's KMS host. So their KMS service is a FIPS-validated hardware encryption module that allows us not only to have secure encryption and decryption, but it allows us a full audit log. So we can see when your data was accessed and by whom. So one thing that this gives us an advantage in for privacy is if a situation were to arise where Okta is required to provide data for one customer, for example, legal discovery, no other customer's data would be exposed at that time. And so this is a really short overview of Okta security, and I can't really get into everything today, but we have many, many resources available. So you can look at our security white paper. If you go to YouTube, there's a really good video by our chief architect, John Todd, where he did a reInvent tech talk. And if you have any questions or any comments, you can always reach out to us and we'll go through that with you and make sure that you understand. And so security starts with a really strong foundation, but it's a journey. And Okta is your partner in this journey. We have many resources to help you and your teams move forward. So let's move on. Let's have Aakash give us a little bit of overview on PCI.
Thanks, Shawn. Hello all. As Shawn said, my name is Aakash. I work as a senior security analyst with the security and compliance team at Okta. A part of my responsibility here at Okta is to ensure we comply with the PCI DSS program. And today I'm here to speak with you about how you can use Okta's products and their features to comply with the program at your organization. Before we deep dive into the products and their features, let's talk a little about what's PCI DSS. So PCI DSS is nothing but an abbreviation for Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. It applies to any organization, be it a merchant or a service provider, that stores, transmits, or processes credit card information. If you do any of the above, PCI DSS is you're required or you should comply with PCI DSS. PCI DSS standard is designed in a way to make recommendations as to how you can protect credit card information that's stored at your organization, how to monitor the credit card information moving through your organization in terms of infrastructure, and how to react if there is a potential data loss that has occurred due to any lapse in the controls that have been designed. According to a report published by Nielsen, worldwide there are a total of 20.48 billion credit and debit cards in circulation. And according to the Federal Reserve Consumer Report, in America alone, the American consumers are juggling about $1.098 trillion worth of credit card debt as of December 2019. This is where Okta comes into the picture. We help you comply, or our Okta's products can help you comply with this standard. We'll talk about the Okta products and their features in a little more detail, but before that, let's deep dive into PCI DSS. PCI DSS standards defines 12 requirements. With the first look of it, they might not seem daunting, but trust me, for larger organizations, it's a really difficult task to comply with all of these requirements. To make it easier for us, for this particular scope, to make it easy for us to understand what's PCI DSS, I have grouped the PCI DSS standards into 6 goals. Not using vendor supplied defaults as system passwords. Firewalls can be used to restrict incoming and outgoing traffic via rules, the rules that are specific to your organization and your use case. And second is hardening your internal systems by first not using vendor supplied defaults, because that's where the first gap lies when you use external infrastructure within your internal networks. Let's group these as firewall groups. The goal 2 is to protect cardholder data. You do that by protecting stored cardholder data and also by encrypting transmission of credit card data or cardholder data through your network from internally to externally. If you store credit card information, it's not only important that you store the credit card information in your organization or in your infrastructure encrypted, but you also ensure that when it's moving across your network, you encrypt it. Let's call it CHD protection or cardholder data protection. The goal 3 is to maintain a vulnerability management program. You do that by protecting all systems against malwares and regularly updating your antivirus software, and by developing and maintaining secure systems and applications within your organization. Let's call them the vulnerability management program goal. The third goal is to implement strong access control measures. You do that by restricting the access to cardholder data by business justifications based on your use cases. You identify and authenticate access to different systems based on your use case again. And you restrict physical access to cardholder data. We can bring all of these 3 requirements into one goal called an access control goal. And that's our goal number 5. Goal number 4. Goal number 5 is regularly monitoring and testing your networks. You achieve this by tracking and monitoring all access to network resources and cardholder data, and by regularly testing security systems and processes. The goal 5 can be boiled down into testing and monitoring. And the final goal is to maintain an information security policy. This entails you defining what are your policies, how the vulnerability management program functions, how access control functions, how firewall rules functions. Basically, you have a central repository for anyone to get in and get full knowledge of what your PCI program entails. So these 6 goals together make PCI DSS, or together make the 12 requirements of PCI DSS. Now comes the products and how Okta can help you comply with PCI DSS at your organization. The first block of products that help you comply with PCI DSS is the IDaaS product. The second one is the ASA, or the Advanced Server Access product. And the third one is OAG, or the Okta Access Gateway product. We'll talk about each of these in a little detail in the coming slides. Let's begin with IDaaS, or Identity as a Service product. Okta's Identity as a Service, or the IDaaS product, is a single sign-on product or identity and access management product that's developed and maintained by Okta themselves. It has features such as single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, centralized provisioning, deprovisioning, and also detailed logging that you get when different actions perform. You can use a combination of these features to comply with the 3 PCI frameworks or PCI requirements. For example, you can use single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, and centralized provisioning and deprovisioning to restrict access to cardholder data. When you perform these actions, all of these actions get converted into logs, detailed logs available to your system administrators via syslogs, which can be used to track and monitor all access to your network resources. Detailed set of logs and fine-grained access controls help you regularly test security systems and processes. So this is how you can use different processes within Okta or different features within Okta to comply with the following 3 requirements. The next product that we'll talk about is Advanced Server Access, or ASA. The ASA product is an Okta product that is an integration with the Okta's identity as an identity platform, or the IDaaS platform. The integration extends user identity management, account lifecycle management, single sign-on, and multi-factor authentication to Linux and Windows authentication via SSH and RDP respectively. You can use Okta ASA's features to protect access or protect cardholder data that's stored within your systems. You can use the access management, or the single sign-on, and the multi-factor authentication, along with project-based access controls within ASA to define who gets access to what resources and identifying who accesses what resources at what given time. All of this information is then used to develop detailed structured logs that can be extracted from the ASA product to your external SIEM tools that can be used to monitor access to different resources. And the final product that we'll talk about is Okta Access Gateway, or the OAG Gateway. Traditional web applications predate modern standards like SAML or OpenID Connect. So they often use legacy authentication methods to grant end users access. Historically, providing single sign-on and centralized access management for end users across the legacy applications requires web application management, or web WAM products. These on-premise software tools could be expensive to maintain and complex to deploy. This is where OAG and IDaaS come into picture. The OAG IDaaS with OAG and IDaaS integration, organizations can protect both on-premise as well as cloud applications from a single identity provider. In this case, it will be Okta. You restrict access to cardholder data by business justification. OAG acts as an agent between the on-premise applications as well as Okta. So whenever a user tries to authenticate into any on-premise application, the authentication will pass through OAG which is then sent to IDaaS for authentication, multi-factor authentication for single sign-on purposes, as well as for ensuring that the person who is requesting access is actually allowed to get access to the system. And as all of Okta's products, all of these activities between the on-premise application and the IDaaS application get tracked and monitored via logs, which can be exported to external SIEM tools, which can then be used by your internal teams or external testers to perform testing on the effectivity of the controls. So this is what your architecture or your system might look like if you implement these three applications together. All these applications, when working together, help you meet access control requirements. They help you meet testing requirements. They help you meet log requirements by giving you detailed logs. You can protect access to your cardholder data based on business justifications using the three applications, and by making sure that you have complete view of who is accessing what using identity and access to your systems. So I hope this gives you a brief idea of what the three products can help you with. You can get much more details when you go into the customer portal and access Okta's white paper, which details what controls can Okta help you with in details with implementation instructions. I'll now like to pass it on to Ali for his section on SOC 2.
Thank you, Aakash. My name is Ali, and I'm part of this compliance team here. I'm a senior compliance analyst. I'm basically managing and participating in the private sector compliance space at Okta. So today we are going to be talking about SOC 2 and how Okta can help you towards your SOC 2 journey. I'm going to start up with providing you with the history of the report. What is the report? What are some of the principles leveraged in the report, along with the structure of the report? So without further ado, let's talk about the history of the SOC 2 report. Before SOC 2, the original standard for auditing service organizations was SAS 70, which was Statement of Auditing Standards number 70. SAS 70 was primarily leveraged by certified public accountants to provide comfort on the effectiveness of the internal financial controls. And this was really the intent of the report. Over time, the report started being leveraged to report information security effectiveness controls. However, on a more broad level, around 2010, AICPA decided to split the SAS 70 reports, rather creating two additional new reports. One was called SOC 1, the other one was called SOC 2. SOC 1 report was primarily geared towards gathering effectiveness of financial internal controls over financial reporting. However, SOC 2 was more designed towards gauging a company's controls and the effectiveness of those controls based on the trust service principles. Today, the SOC 1 report generally centered around controls impacting financial reports, similar to the original SAS 70, and SOC 2 report, on the other hand, is written on audits against trust service principles, which I'll explain in the successive slide. The SOC 2 standard is ideal if you are looking for a way to simultaneously improve your company's security and maturity around business processes around security. With that, I'm going to take a deeper dive into what a SOC 2 report is. A SOC 2 report is a report at a service organization relevant to security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, or privacy. SOC 2 report is intended to meet the needs of broad range of users that need detailed information around and insurance around the controls surrounding an service organization's security, availability, processing integrity, and confidentiality. And how the service organization used to process user data and the confidentiality and privacy surrounding the controls around these systems included in the report. This report can play an important role in oversight of the organization around gauging the effectiveness of a company's vendor management program, gauging the internal corporate governance and the risk associated with the processes running within an organization, provides insights into a company's compliance to regulatory oversight, and overall, to measure the effectiveness of a security program in lieu of these principles. Similar to a SOC 1 report, a SOC 2 report is divided into two types of report, a Type 1 report and a Type 2 report. A Type 1 report gives assurance on management's description of service, organization system, and suitability of the design of those controls. However, a Type 2 report goes a little bit deeper. It not only gives assurance on management's description of the service organization system around suitability of design, but also the effectiveness of these controls as I described in the trust service principles. Now I'm going to go a little bit deeper into what these trust services principles are. To begin with, SOC 2 report contains common criteria. Common criteria almost always touches on all trust service principles controls related to the effectiveness of measuring a company's security posture. This is the biggest section of the audit and touches every aspect of the information security controls. Companies can start with common criteria and then a common criteria audit. And if they're looking to keep the scope small, common criteria can include other aspects as noted below. In addition to common criteria, mature SaaS companies tend to add confidentiality and availability principles. The integrity principle is typically used by companies processing large amounts of data, as well as financial institutions. Privacy is seldomly used as part of a SOC 2 report, because the value the most to more organizations tend to focus towards around compliance with HIPAA, EU, like GDPR. And those European companies generally want to audit against their own standards rather than a SOC 2 report. They tend to have more standards requirements. If you need to uphold GDPR, for example, you'll need to focus on privacy when you go through the audit. Now, going deeper into the trust service principles, security as being the foundational principle other than common criteria, this principle basically is common to all audits, and information systems and gauges the information and systems protected against unauthorized access, unauthorized disclosure of information, and damage to system that could compromise availability, integrity, confidentiality, and privacy of information. The confidentiality principle talks about or gauges a company's controls around protection from unauthorized access to disclosures of sensitive data. The availability principle gauges or evaluates protection of those systems or data will be available on agreed upon SLAs. Integrity principle gauges or evaluates the protection of systems or data that are not changed in unauthorized manner. And finally, The privacy principle, the use and collection of retention and disclosure of personal information within an information system. Now I'm going to talk briefly about the structure of the SOC II report. SOC II report is more broadly divided into 4 sections. Section 1, which is independent auditor's report. This section provides the readers the service auditor's opinion on the system description, design, and operating effectiveness to meet the control objectives. Section 2, which is management's assertion, provides the reader with the facts and assertions made by the service organization's management related to the systems under audit. Section 3 of this report is a description of the system, a detailed report on the written management boundaries, infrastructure, controls, subservice organizations, user entity controls, and other system information. And finally, auditor's test of controls. This is the most important section whereby each controls which is being tested by the auditors and is aligned by the trust service principle is tested, and the results of those tests are provided in this section. With that said, I'm going to talk about the purpose of the report. SOC II examination, specifically, it's designed to address service organizations' controls that are related to systems leveraged to process user data and service organization. SOC 2 applies to all organizations and enterprises providing services that process, store customer data. The audience of this report typically is, as I mentioned earlier, oversight of the organization, gives insights into the vendor management program, internal corporate governance, and the risk management function, and the regulatory oversight of an organization. Now, I'm going to talk about how Okta can help its customers meet the SOC 2 compliance obligations. Okta has built-in security controls that help safeguard customer information and meet the requirements of the trust service principles. Okta empowers teams with access workflows, seamless onboarding and transfer and offboarding process, access reviews and termination process made easy, reduce burden on audit evidence gathering. Features that lower burden to meet the SOC 2 control requirements, defining one-size-fits-all policies to manage competing frameworks, and the password complexity requirements, SOC 2 versus GLBA versus FedRAMP. Efficient onboarding and offboarding workflows, reduced evidence gathering vis-a-vis built-in workflows. Audit Log Feature. This feature enables Okta customers admin to review employee activities in near real time and gives them the flexibility to integrate with customer SIM solution. Role-based access control. Security groups are utilized to assign role-based access privileges to corporate resources and segregate access based on job function. Encryption in transit and encryption in rest. Okta uses industry-standard secure encryption methodologies designed to encrypt communication between servers and the customer browsers, and between servers and customer servers, and to protect the customer data. Here are some of the examples of Okta customers currently leveraging Okta for their SOC 2 needs. With that said, I'm going to hand over to Michelle, who's going to talk about FedRAMP.
Thank you, Ali. Thanks, everyone. My name is Michelle Tuggle. Thank you for joining us today, our team today, for this discussion. I'm Principal Security Analyst for Security and Compliance here at Okta. It's an honor to join you here today with my esteemed colleagues as we discuss the inner workings of security and compliance governance. Today, I want to discuss a very important federal risk management and security framework for cloud service providers. The Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program, otherwise known as FedRAMP, is an essential step in Okta's quest for higher levels of operational confidentiality, integrity, and availability within both federal and the federal government and commercial marketplaces. Now let's examine why FedRAMP approval is a crucial step in our ability to broker customer assurance within a very competitive arena. As I've so often heard in my earlier tenure with government leaders and managers, what is FedRAMP and how are we supposed to protect our data in this cloud thing? For many years, government leaders and managers relied on technology business as usual. Hardware connected to hardware, connected and glued together by firmware to software. Basically everything hardwired and expensive to scale. Well, as early as 2010, the United States Chief Information Officer realized that operations within the cloud was not only efficient from a cost perspective, but also scalable. Inefficient from a cost perspective, or was efficient from a cost perspective, but also scalable. So the CIO issued a 25-point implementation plan to reform federal information technology, which call for a cloud-first approach for IT infrastructure considerations. Meanwhile, the Office of Management and Budget, or OMB as we so know, was sanctioned to employ the National Institute of Standards and Technology's Risk Management Framework as a de facto cloud governance process. For newly developed FedRAMP processes in 2011, basically, the federal government mandated that its agencies begin leveraging in the cloud. So by 2012 and beyond, FedRAMP becomes the de facto process by which the federal government or federal agencies are assured the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of their data in the cloud through viable assessment processes. When you really think about it, cloud computing concepts, technology, and platforms have grown exponentially since 2011. In retrospect, the convergence of the federal government's decision to operate in the cloud, the security standards developed by NIST, and the risk and RMF construct in which they would be applied, all contributed to what we know today as the Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program, that we now know as FedRAMP. Again, FedRAMP leverages NIST controls, which are divided into 20 control families to include data privacy and protective measures. FedRAMP encompasses 3 impact levels from which federal agencies determine are required to protect their data. As a cloud service provider, Okta and other cloud service providers seek to fulfill these impact levels via NIST controls and requirements to align with those agencies. These impact levels are based in confidentiality, integrity, and availability from which the impact determination is derived. Let's consider for a moment how security and compliance align. Being compliant does not automatically mean secure. As Shawn pointed out, Okta was born in security. In essence, we have strived to build our secure capabilities in alignment to compliance measures and regulatory standards. We understand that security is based on inherent risk, and our successes lie in our ability to protect against vulnerabilities. We also understand that our compliance or ability to adhere to prescribed controls is simply a measure of how we apply security. Now, there's a slight difference in how FedRAMP measures impact, which is low, moderate, and high, and how the Department of Defense determines impact, which is measured in impact level 2, impact level 4, impact level 5, and high. This is eventually based on the classification of the data being handled. Both measures are based in impact. As you can see, we have a number of federal and non-federal agencies that are confident in our pledge to protect their data in the cloud. That number continues to grow as we seek to undergo stringent federal requirements for higher impact level handling requirements. We believe that our future is bright here at Okta, especially in the federal marketplace. As you can see, we will be busy in the future in our quest to move to higher impact levels. These are just a few tasks that will require completion as we move in that direction. In alignment with FedRAMP approvals to operate at IL4 and beyond, we are also looking to move most of these efforts from our current presence on AWS, on the AWS infrastructure, to the more robust AWS GovCloud infrastructure. GovCloud affords Okta operational protections at high levels for federal agencies seeking those environments. And GovCloud East and West support U.S. operations and U.S.-based requirements. Okta will be seeking approval for IL5 and high in the coming fiscal years as well. As you can see, it's an exciting time for Okta within both federal and commercial marketplaces. We hope to contribute to broker your trust and that you'll continue to meet us there. For more information, please go to Okta Security to www.okta.com/security. You'll find helpful white papers and compliance information regarding Okta offerings. Thank you.